April 5th, 2020. With apologies to Rod Serling, I had this dream the other night. The country, indeed the entire world, was facing a crisis the likes of which hadn't been seen in 100 years. War, plague, pestilence, the kind of thing that causes widespread panic and confusion as people struggle to deal with and make sense of a new reality that upended decades of relative stability and tranquility. In this dream, the nation's duly elected leader was a voice of calm combined with determination and just a touch of reassurance that we would see this thing through. The leader spoke in complete sentences and was utterly rational and unflappable in the face of mounting disaster. When pressed by reporters to account for past mistakes and shortcomings, the leader acknowledged that yes, things could have gone better, that he could have done better, and that he was deploying all of the resources at his disposal, civilian and military, to make up for lost time and defeat the enemy. When it came to the specific strategy and tactics that would be used, rather than claiming that he was the unequaled expert on the subject, the leader deferred to the scientists and generals who had made the study of similar threats the focus of their entire careers. The leader didn't care who got credit for any successes and readily accepted blame for every setback. He didn't just sit behind the resolute desk. He was the epitome of resolute steadfastness himself as he looked the nation in the eye and promised that, in our darkest hour, the decisions he was making had but one purpose: to root out and destroy that which posed such a menacing threat to our lives and our livelihood. Oh, sure, the leader would be attacked for every weakness, real and imagined, by the paranoid conspiracy theorists whose only mission in life is to sow fear and doubt in the minds of their fellow citizens. Entire so-called news networks would attack the leader relentlessly, knowing that people like to be scared and that scaring people is good for the bottom line. And yet the leader brushed off the relentless catcalls and howls from those who didn't like the way he spoke, the way he looked, the way his beautiful family was adored around the world. When the worst among us, the trolls, bigots, and snake oil salesmen, crawled out from under their rocks, the leader ignored them as the distractions they are and kept the focus on the mission. He was a leader in every sense of the word, confident in his ability and humble in his approach. Then I awoke to find that the world is indeed facing a once-in-a-century crisis that threatens not just the institutions of life, but, for many, life itself. Only now the leader is so utterly unequal to the task that it would be difficult to imagine anyone more unprepared to guide us when the nation and the world need him most. The leader is the patriarch of a mad family who built his alleged wealth through real estate scams and a television program that appealed to a vacuous audience. Rather than facing the crisis with humility, the leader repeatedly claims that no one knows more about fill in the blank than me, whether that blank is foreign affairs, of which he has actually had several, the economy, in which he somehow managed to drive his own casino into bankruptcy, or public health, in which he claimed to have called pandemic before anyone else, yet inexplicably failed to take even the slightest initiative in preparation. The leader considers his family, comprised entirely of low-level grifters and petty thieves, to know more about running the country than people who have built their lives around running the country, as if a career politician suddenly proclaimed herself the world's leading expert on commercial real estate. And instead of deferring to the real expertise of doctors, scientists, and military commanders, the leader requires pledges of abject fealty to his own self-proclaimed genius, lest they fall out of favor and be replaced by people who know the leader values personal loyalty over everything else, including, maybe even especially, true knowledge and wisdom. So the leader appointed his bootlicking second-in-command, a toady so consumed for fear for his own job that he can't speak for 5 minutes without mentioning just how great his boss is, to head the federal effort to combat the threat, apparently because the leader believes that it's best to lead from the rear in wartime. And when, somehow, the yes man appeared too competent at the task, the leader allowed his nitwit son-in-law to become the de facto person in charge of the government's response to the threat. The son-in-law is a C-minus student whose father bought him admission to Harvard before he married the leader's hot, dim-wit daughter a few years after dear old dad was convicted of tax evasion and witness tampering. The son-in-law has such brilliant foresight that he bought the most expensive single property in history for top dollar, then spent years falling desperately short of his monthly nut on a $1.8 billion loan. So naturally, the father-in-law put him in charge of all the things he knows so much about, from Middle East peace to retooling the entire government, apparently because he's such a tool himself. So instead of a dream in which only a comprehensive, coordinated effort by the federal government can possibly deal with the crisis, we're faced with the reality of a family of inbred nincompoops led by a pathologically insecure yet maniacally overconfident dimwit whose only response to fear and criticism is to blame others, all the while heaping boundless, unwarranted praise upon himself. Or maybe this is the dream, and you have entered the Twilight Zone.